Hey, Tom, how's it going, man?
Good, Noah. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. We just had a typical Twitter space, technical difficulties, and so we wanted to push out the new link to everyone that had already set reminders and make sure everyone's in here and they understand that the space is not canceled, it's not over, it's still happening, and we're gonna get started here in a minute. We'll extend the time towards the end as well so that we can get through everything. I know we have a lot to cover, but Tom, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. Do you want to give a quick intro of yourself, who you are, and how you figured out you're interested in crypto, how you figured out ways to build in the industry, and also what you're studying? Tell us about how you're going to bridge those two together and potentially have a career in this industry going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Noah. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me on the space and giving me a platform to promote, what I've been working on and Cuse blockchain as well. But a little bit about myself. I'm a junior at Syracuse University, majoring in computer science and also minoring in information management and technology. And, you know, in high school, I always knew I excelled at math and just kind of like problem solving. And then I got into coding and gone went down the rabbit hole of like JavaScript and React and just building simple applications with that. So then I was like, okay, next step, I chose to major in computer science in college, and then my freshman year, I remember like COVID was going on, really was not much to do, spent a lot of time in my dorm room and I was like I want to investigate what this Bitcoin thing was. I'd heard about it but I didn't really understand it. So I watched this video by Three Blue One Brown. It's just a simple explanation of how Bitcoin and blockchains work and it was really after that video where the concepts really click for me. And I feel like coming from a technical background really helped that. And so, from there, as the saying goes, like I went down a bunch of rabbit holes, different, just trying to consume and learn as much as I could through like Twitter and other platforms. And then my sophomore year is when I learned about Cuse blockchain. It was actually in that fall. It was like the first semester it was on campus. So I joined the club right away and started to attend the meetings. And the club format really started out as having one meeting a week and the focus just being very educationally based. So there would be, a topic every week and the kind of people that ran the club would present and then there would be like conversation and kind of given my like passion and learning from all these different resources. I was like I really want to help, be one of the people to help teach topics in the club. And that's really where my passion for like teaching others um, emerged. And I've done a lot of thing teaching concepts and the sort since then. And then more so on the computer science like career side, I interned for JP Morgan last summer as a software engineer. Got the experience of being a software engineer at a big bank. And then from there I was like, I have the computer science software engineer background, and I'm really passionate about this blockchain stuff. So I was like, Solidity is like a great thing to learn. It's a skill that is very sought after. So I started to learn Solidity as well during my sophomore year, in building out different decentralized applications. So that's kind of like a broad overview of my background. I don't know if I missed anything.
No, that's not at all. I really appreciate you going through all that for us. And it sounds like quite the journey. Almost seems like you were meant to build in this industry, starting with your aptitude for mathematics, going into computer science, And then I want to talk a bit about your journey learning Solidity. How long? I've heard from other computer science engineers excuse me, from other computer science engineers and computer science majors before that Solidity is generally speaking easy compared to other languages. Did you find that to be true?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at that point in my programming career, I'd already learned several languages. So I think after a certain point, it becomes easy to learn a new language. And like right now, I'm actually creating a course to, like, teach other people Solidity, and I was like, damn, like it honestly really isn't that many like topics that you have to cover. The language itself it feels simple compared to other programming languages. I mean, it's a C-like language. You know, there's a lot of languages that look like it. But I think where the complexity comes in is the fact that Solidity is a higher level language, and you have the EVM underneath that. And so there's a lot of area of like optimizing your code for like gas usage and security. Like that is really where it's a longer journey and really where like the value is at, because I can create a smart contract that is fully functional, but only a couple people are using it. Like if we're talking about a smart contract that's being deployed with billions of dollars of assets that it's managing, you know, it's going to be very scrutinized.
So, Tom, you said that once you learned Solidity, you started building dApps, and obviously you've dabbled in smart contracts. What are some dApps that you've built? What are you interested in building?
Yeah, I mean, to start, I built some very simple apps just to kind of get my skills up to snuff. I went to ETH NYC, which is a hackathon, an Ethereum hackathon in New York City last summer, and it was my first hackathon. I had found a group of teammates, and we were thinking about ideas around like creators. You know, how can we incentivize like the creation of content, and just kind of going back to like the Web3 ethos of like there it feels like a lot of creating creator spaces that it's only the like elite of the elite that end up being able to monetize and make money. Like the people on YouTube, you know, there's a high take rate and you have to get like millions of views and be grinding for a while to really make it. So it's kind of that barrier to entry. So our idea was that you could any user could create what is called a bounty, which it would be like a topic, like let's say like the best video, the funniest video, and then you would put a stake alongside that, and then other then any video maker could submit to this bounty in hopes of like winning the total stake. And then in order for people to see what videos were submitted and also to vote, they would have to stake. And then there would be an end deadline period where the votes would be counted up, and the person with the video with the most votes would get that stake. Um, so it was a cool idea, but more generally, like where what really interests me is I think a lot more on like the infrastructure technical side. Um, Thinking about crypto UX, I think wallets, I think just crypto usability at the current point is too hard. Like even setting up a wallet myself and just interacting with applications, it requires a lot of background knowledge of private keys and security. And, you know, it's fine that I'm learning that. But, you know, if I think about like any of my friends or my parents trying to use this stuff, what they're used to is very simple things. Like you have to you can't, I don't think you can expect everybody to know what a private key is and proper security and that sort of stuff. So that's one area that really interests me is like how can we make the UX of crypto you just more suited for wide stream adoption.
Yeah, Tom, honestly, I couldn't have said that better myself. I always said the future of mass adoption is when people are interfacing with Web3, when it looks like they're interfacing with Web2. You know, for example, you want to stake a liquidity pool, you want to do it in one button. You want to do it in one go, and you don't want to see the 16 transactions that happen on the back end, which we are currently going through. Same with private key storage, same with non-custodial storage, right? This all needs to be designed and needs to be streamlined in a way where everyone can use it. Mom and dad can use it, grandma and grandpa can use it. And I think it's great that you're already thinking about this and you're not even out of college yet. And it's one of the reasons I always say that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be the next big wave of interest, money, adoption, and great minds that push this industry to the next level. So on that end, I would love to learn about um, Cuse blockchain, formerly known as Crypto Cuse, and we can talk about the name change here in a bit. But I would love to know more about the club, and how you got into the club, how you got well, you kind of mentioned it, but your role in the club, the different ways that you guys are educating the greater Syracuse student base, and kind of different ways that you guys facilitate one another, educate one another, whether it's workshops, whether it's having conferences, whether it's going to meetups. I would love for you to get into all of that for us. So, Mike's yours, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, so I can touch on the rebranding in a little bit, but for background on Q's blockchain and how it's structured, um, I would say in the beginning, as I said before, it was very educationally focused, and I think that is still a very big part of the club. So, every week we pick a new topic, and in the fall, really the focus is okay, let's go to square one, blockchain basics, consensus algorithms, self custodial wallets, all of that, and then moving into NFTs, which always brings a lot of students in, especially when the NFT was hype was at its peak, and then decentralized finance. So like we kind of will have a meeting where we'll have that topic selected, and then we'll do a lecture on that, and then kind of open it up towards the end for conversation. So that has always kind of been our core tenet. Um, and then we've started to expand to other initiatives. So one example is last spring we had a career workshop where we brought in a number of different companies. There was a mix of, there was like Fidelity Digital Assets, and then some like smaller startup crypto companies, and then just like all across the stack as well in terms of enterprise versus more kind of crypto centric. And we had these different companies speak, and then had breakout rooms for students to talk to these companies, which was a great thing. Um, but my focus is really shifted towards how can we get the students to really interact with the space more. Like, there's one thing where you're teaching somebody a concept just like verbally through like a lecture, but I think learning by doing is really important. I mean, it's how I've learned the best. You really don't understand smart contracts or gas or any of that till you had to make your first transaction or whatever. So I've been really focused on how do we get more students, setting up wallets, interacting with stuff. And one initiative that I started last semester was we wanted to kind of have some sort of NFT collection because that's been mentioned a lot. And I feel like NFTs for our club is, a very kind of attractive thing to like bring in students that aren't like too knowledgeable about the space. So we were like, all right, we want to have an NFT collection. Like, how can we get more people involved? So we settled on the idea of an NFT design competition where we like pair up with like the art design schools at Syracuse because there's a lot of those type of students. And we had just like a general theme like like all about Syracuse, or like what's your interpretation of like Syracuse as like a university campus? And students would submit a digital image of their artwork or like a rendering, and then we on the back end minted those as NFTs, one for the artist to hold, and then another to distribute in the community. But I thought it was like a great way of like, now these artists have to set up wallets, and I want the artists to understand like the appeal of NFTs, of this idea of Web3, where they have this alternative financialization model. So yeah, those are a couple of things, that couple initiatives we had running in the past.
Yeah, definitely. Some questions from me. One, you said that in the fall you guys go back to square one. You focus on blockchain basics, consensus algos, proper storage, um, proper storage options, NFTs, DeFi. Do you guys go back to square one every year because you just have new students coming into the club that don't know anything about the industry?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of the hardest thing to balance, is that everyone's coming from a different background, and then also like a different knowledge base specific to like blockchain. So I think starting it all over like in the fall is a good pace, because if we were to start from square one every semester, because there definitely is a flow of new students coming in every semester, it would just be tough to kind of retain the people that have already like learned about that. They want to learn new and different things. So I think having it like once a year is a good pace. But yeah, that's something I've thought a lot about. Like I think, we should have general body meetings where, we're kind of covering more broad topics. But then, there's kids that are, more so interested in the financial side, or maybe they're interested in it from an art perspective, or maybe they're like me, where they're interested in like the technology side of things. So I think that like having a central kind of meeting to facilitate just like broader knowledge and community, and then having like different shoot off events that are more so focused in one area is like a good model to have.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to talk a bit about, you've mentioned several times, finding the best way to educate your fellow students and finding the best way to get them to understand the potential of this technology, the potential of the industry. And you kind of went off on your own in the beginning. And this is similar to my journey. And I didn't really have a structure, right? I watched a video on YouTube, it clicked, and then I went down the YouTube rabbit hole. I went down the Twitter rabbit hole. I found different courses online, but you basically have to fend for yourself, for lack of a better term, and try to teach yourself this stuff the best that you can. But now there's infrastructure at the collegiate level. You have blockchain clubs. You have people like you who are teaching your fellow students about how this stuff works, and there are professors that are teaching accredited courses on Web3. So this is a different atmosphere. And because of that, I've found that typically Gen Zs seem to be more accepting, or willing to understand or willing to learn about Web3 than millennials, who get very interested when we go into these crazy bull markets, but then kind of lose interest and call it a scam. So, do you feel that when you try to educate your peers and you try to educate your fellow students, that there's pushback? What's the general sentiment towards the industry, especially in this cold bear market? And what are some ways, apart from, right, having this curriculum that you guys design within the group, having people come in and learn from a basic level? What are some different ways on a day-to-day basis, you, from your anecdotal experience, uh, are educating your friends and your family and your fellow peers?
Yeah, that's a good question, and honestly, it's something I would say I've like struggled with, is that, when it comes to certain things, like with friends or family, like they're just not going to really care or give it like the time of day to learn. So it can be tough in that regard when it comes to like blockchain or cryptocurrencies. Like I'm not you're not gonna force something down somebody's throat unless like they're kind of coming in with a general interest. So I would say in certain environments where there's kind of hostility or an unwillingness to learn, I'm not I don't go too out of my way to push against that, but when somebody shows kind of a curiosity or an interest is really where, I start breaking things down and explaining things. If it's a friend that's like, oh, like I'm kind of interested in Bitcoin or Ethereum and like how that works, that's where I start explaining the basic concepts and then I start plugging like I listen to this podcast, that podcast. These are some of the resources that I've used. I also really like Twitter. I've posted a lot of threads on my Twitter, and I had one from like a year ago, and the thread is like the beginner's guide to blockchain. I literally like I w- I was thinking like if I were to give myself like a path, a course to get to like kind of the knowledge base I was at, what would that be? So I crafted that up and sent it to all my friends. So I think trying to use like Twitter as a platform has worked somewhat successfully for me.
Yeah, I could say that again. My experience and what has been successful for me is very similar to what you're saying has been successful for you. And I couldn't agree more, man. When people don't want to listen, if they want to be ignorant, then I used to ram it. Unlike you, I used to try to ram it down their throats, especially when I first learned about this stuff. Because I'm like, you have to understand what I'm learning, and it's so much potential, and there's all these great things. But now I'm very much in the camp of just, hey, if you want to learn, I'm happy to sit down with you. Otherwise, sorry. But Tom, I wanted to ask you, and I did see you uncue your mic there, but I wanted to ask you. You said something earlier that I agree with. You said that you learn by doing, and I'm very much in the same camp. So, apart from offering people that are open to learning different ways and different platforms to gain knowledge from, what's some advice that you give them as far as actually learning how to interface with this stuff? Because it is, you're right. I mean, I would say for someone your age it's probably pretty easy, but for maybe older people it isn't as easy. So what are some ways you offer?
Definitely. So if I were giving advice to somebody maybe a little bit older that's trying to wrap their head around this technology, I mean the one exercise that I think is really valuable is I think a lot of people if they like are buying into crypto, they'll just buy it on Coinbase and they'll just have it sit on that platform. And as we know, like they're I think centralized exchanges have a very important role to play, and that's being a fiat on ramp. But they like holding your cryptocurrency on an exchange, on a centralized exchange, you know, kind of goes against the ethos of crypto and controlling your own keys and that sort of stuff. So, I try to explain like this is why holding your cryptocurrency on a centralized exchange is a bad thing. Then the next thing should be to set up your own self custodial wallet. Understand like a recovery phrase, like how understand like how does that recover a wallet if you lose your private key? Like how does that work? And go through the process of properly storing that recovery phrase and then take the currency from the centralized exchange, send it to that self-custodial wallet. Another thing is if you're on Ethereum, I would say purchase an ENS domain. I bought mine. Set that up for yourself. You'll get experience just sending out transactions and get comfortable looking at Etherscan. Etherscan is definitely an important tool because you really understand like the transparency that blockchain offers and like in certain ways it's it's a little bit too much transparency. Like you could look up my address and see like all my transactions and what currencies I own and that sort of stuff. um but you get the idea of using Etherscan. And then another thing is like go to Remix is a web IDE that makes deploying smart contracts really easy, or like do Crypto Zombies is a very simple Solidity course and just do like a very basic Solidity tutorial just to understand, smart contracts, how do transactions work. And if you're feeling confident with that, then I would move into ERC's Ethereum request for comments, which um, there's ERC 20s, which are tokens, and then ERC 721s, which are non-fungible tokens. Look at those and understand how they work. So that would kind of be the initial. And then like another thing is like going to a decentralized exchange and doing a token swap or something like that. Those are just very simple ways that will really ramp up your knowledge of how this technology works.
And Tom, I couldn't agree more. I think this is probably given, but folks that are coming into your fellow students that are coming into and joining your blockchain club for the first time, do you guys walk them through how to do all these things?
Yes, and that's going to be like one of the sessions this semester, as I kind of explained it. Like, what are the issues with centralized exchanges? What value do they actually provide? Setting up a self-custodial wallet, understanding private public keys, even like purchasing an ENS domain. Like that's my plan for one of the meetings, and that honestly, like after the implosion of FTX, there was a huge push for like custodying your own like assets and that sort of stuff. So I really want to make a push for that.
Love it. I think that we probably, well, I did want to ask you about the career workshop. And you mentioned earlier that you guys have these career workshops where big enterprise companies come, crypto companies come, small companies come, and it's a way for students to engage and potentially find career opportunities. Did you want to elaborate on that more, or rather tell us why the most recent one was so successful?
Yeah, sorry. So you were asking about the career workshop from last spring and why it was successful?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, we did have the benefit of the timing of before everything with FTX going on. So that definitely helped because some of the companies are no longer with us. But I think the value of it was just giving. I think the best part of like the workshop that we did was having the breakout rooms between the employer, like between the people giving the presentations from the companies and the students themselves, because it just allowed them to have a personal connection and ask any questions they want and have a future connection that they can communicate with. So I think that was a very important aspect. And then another thing is, I think a big driver for students are jobs. I mean, I guess I guess you could generally say like everyone's goal out of college is to get a job. So like everyone's kind of motivated by that one force, and like having like a career workshop where we're like, okay, there's more than just engineering opportunities out here. You could be a writer, you could be doing business development. Like these are the different understanding, like what the different roles, what the different career paths there are out there in this ecosystem, because it's not none of this stuff is the space hasn't been around long enough to have that sort of stuff solidified. No, he's still there.
Sorry about that, man. I thought I uncued my mic. So I want on that note, I wanted to find out what you're personally planning on doing once you graduate. So, I'm assuming you want to work in the industry, but what kind of work are you pursuing? Do you want to start your own company? Do you want to join a company that's already established? Give us some insight into that, please.
Yeah, so it's definitely something I think about a lot, and I'm I would say I don't find myself super entrepreneurial in the fact that like I would create my own company, at least, as of right now. I want to take my software engineering skills and bring it to like a startup size company somewhere in like the blockchain infrastructure space. And like one thing that I've been doing recently is like over the winter break, I've always been really interested in zero knowledge proofs. And just from the outset, they sound super powerful. And like for those that don't know what zero knowledge proofs are, it's a cryptographic concept, and just like the whole idea is that you can prove the validity of a statement without like revealing the statement itself. And there's a lot of applications in the blockchain space that are super powerful. I mean, there's roll-ups, there's decentralized identity, there's privacy. So there's a lot of ways in which it can be applied. And I was just really interested in like how can we achieve something that seems like almost kind of impossible. And so I started doing some different readings. And then there's actually a zero knowledge MOOC going on over the spring, and it's taught by professors from Stanford and Berkeley. And it's like just a great supplement to like the work I'm doing in school right now. And I'm trying to see like there maybe I can I'm trying to see like explore like what different things I can learn from it, and then maybe work at a company that's doing work related to zero knowledge proofs.
Are you familiar with Mina protocol at all?
Yeah, I've definitely heard of Mina before, but if you want to explain it quickly.
Yeah, well, they're big with ZK Snarks, and they're doing a lot of work on that end. So I figured you might be interested in at least exploring them. So tell me this: What are your plans going into the senior year for um, for the blockchain club? Do you have anything different you guys want to do? Do you guys have any ideas as far as contests or engaging students, things that might have not, or rather, taking things that you might have not tried before and scrapping things that might have not worked so well in the past?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. And as of lately, I've been just really narrow focused on this semester and just really focused on like building that community, because I feel like it's been a bit fragmented at parts, and we really need to build a strong core. And like I'm teaching a doing an Ethereum development workshop because we've really struggled in having engineers within our club. And as an engineer myself, I'd enjoy having more technically minded people, and um, it unlocks a lot of projects that you can do. So, I think building off of that my senior year, if we have that strong core within the club, and we have the engineers and the people that are more experienced, that we can really start putting together projects. So like building out different applications that we think are cool or have potential, or maybe doing work for a company that wants to outsource some work. So I think taking that next step of like building projects, and then attending different hackathons or conferences, and just bringing in more sponsors, I think like those would be my goals. But it's very dependent on this semester, and I'm just like that's where my focus is right now, to be honest.
Uh, I know that we talked briefly about the rebranding of Cuse blockchain. It was originally known as Crypto Cuse. What were the motivations behind that?
Yeah, definitely a good question, and good transition. Um, yeah, we originally named CryptoCuse, and I honestly wasn't thinking about it too much, but some of the other executives were like, I think I think we're in need of changing our name, and the reasoning behind that is I think last semester we definitely our membership dropped a lot with the market events going on, and that was because we had a lot of I think we just attracted a lot of students that were interested in like the financial aspect. Like they were drawn in about like how can I make money off this cryptocurrency stuff. Um, and I think it's in due part because of our name. And then given just the events going on, crypto got this negative connotation and there was really nothing we could do about it. And then also just if you look at all of the the other blockchain clubs, Penn Blockchain or Duke Blockchain Labs or Texas Blockchain, um, every club has blockchain in their name, and it just sounds a lot more professional. So we decided Cuse Blockchain would be a lot better of a name, would be a great rebranding, and kind of put the focus back on the technology itself, help attract engineering students, and kind of get away from like the negative connotation of crypto.
Yeah, I certainly agree that language matters, terminology matters. Blockchain sounds better than crypto for obvious reasons at this point. And I mean, you see the same thing with NFTs, right? You change the name to digital collectibles, and all of a sudden people are all about them, especially the Reddit community for the most part who hated NFTs. Call them digital collectibles and they switch real quick. And it does the same thing on the back end, but they just people's brains have a negative connotation with certain terms, especially when they come in for a quick buck and it doesn't work out in their favor. So I think it makes sense, the rebranding of the name. Tom, we are headed towards the end of the broadcast, and before I like to do this kind of Q&A towards the end with the individual, but before I do that, is there anything about Cuse blockchain or yourself as a student or a future career man that you would like to share with us that I haven't asked about?
Um, about Q's blockchain or anything else. Um, I think I really have hit on things strongly, but I I kind of want to touch back on like my enjoyment of helping teach. And I mentioned earlier that I'm doing an Ethereum development workshop, so it's going to be a four-part series where the first part is going to just be like, what is the EVM? What are the different aspects of Ethereum as a network, and then going into Solidity, and then going into dApp development. And it's just the whole like concept of helping teach others has really fueled me, and it has become a focus of mine. And then another thing that I've been thinking about, we talked about like how I learned to code on my own, and there's just so many resources out on the internet that have allowed me to get to where I am. Like I'm taking the ZK MOOC, and it's totally free and it's available online. So it's that the whole like the concept of internet and just the freedom of access to information has really helped me, and I want to help like pass that on to others.
Again, I won't. I don't want to hard shell Mina, but if you are interested, and it sounds like you are, Tom, in working with zero knowledge technology, I would look up Mina Protocol, and I would maybe try to reach out to the team. I think they could use someone like you. So, moving on to the last part, I this is kind of a Q&A that I like to do with guests, and it's fun. So, Tom, first off, and if you don't feel comfortable answering anything, definitely just say, hey, no, I don't feel comfortable, and it's no worries at all. But first and foremost, what are your thoughts about Bitcoin, right? The OG, do you believe Bitcoin will ever be flipped by another crypto asset? And do you believe that Bitcoin will always be correlated with tech stocks?
Yeah. So my general thought on Bitcoin, I mean, I become a lot less bullish on it over the year, over like the past 2 years. And I think there will be a point in time in which Ethereum flips it. I'm definitely I'm the most bullish on the Ethereum ecosystem, and I do think that there will be other smart contract platforms out there, but I think Ethereum has the market share by far, and just the roadmap that they've put out, all the development going on there has been very promising. But Bitcoin at a base layer is really just a value transfer layer, and it's really just for storing value. I do think there is definitely value within that. I mean, I've been hearing some interesting things. There was a paper that came out of Harvard, uh, like I think it was like a graduate student was writing about
Great paper, by
how
the way.
how certain nation states are um, adopting or should start adopting Bitcoin as basically a sanctions hedge. So I do think that Bitcoin potentially has the potential to get a lot of value, but I'm a lot more bullish on Ethereum and what's going on there. I don't know. I feel at times I get I just get bored by Bitcoin, and like that's nothing on it. I think it is the purest form of a blockchain, is the most proven, but not having the kind of global computer aspect to it, I feel like kind of hurts it in a way.
Yeah, Tom, I'm sorry for cutting you off there, man. You're the first person I've heard that's told me they've read that paper, and if anyone does go dive into it, it's very well written, and he makes a lot of great points, and a strong he makes a strong use case for why that would that will probably happen if it isn't already happening, as far as nations hedging by holding Bitcoin. But I wanted to ask a follow up question. You said you're eyeing other layer ones or smart contract ecosystems. What are some that have caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I've dove too deeply into other platforms. I've been Solana's just caught my eye because of all of like the hype around it. And obviously it's trying to beat Ethereum with the speed, the time to finality and the cheapness of the fees, but then that hurts it in the aspect of centralization, and we saw these network outages. So I think Solana still has a lot to prove, but I am really I'm very interested by the Solana saga, their like mobile phone and what's going on there. That gets me really excited because uh, like phones are the the number one thing that people use to like interface with the internet. And so if we want adoption, there needs to be like a secure way to store your keys. And just given the monopoly that Apple has, and just their unwillingness to like participate in this space, like I think the Saga phone could be huge. Um, but I also really interested by the layer twos on top of Ethereum, and just the scalability going on there. I think will be a huge part of the future.
Yeah, Tom, I agree. I think the smartphone was the last missing piece to bring the internet to everyone and really make us connected to it all the time. So it will be very interesting to see what Solana has planned with the Solana phone. And I I didn't start looking too deep into the ecosystem until I heard about that phone. I'm probably going to try to get my hands on one and try to get them on for a space as well. So cool. I like that. I like that thought process there. Really quick question on Ethereum before I move on to a couple more questions. Did you like the merge? Do you think it was the right idea, the right decision?
Yes, I really liked the merge. Um, I think, as of now, because proof of stake really wasn't proven at scale before this, and that was kind of the biggest thing against proof of stake, is that it wasn't a proven consensus model. And so obviously the longer that Ethereum's on proof of stake and it's working, uh, is very beneficial. And because I think personally, like the whole proof of work consumption of energy, like I know that it's a very high amount of renewables, and that it has use cases of being able to stabilize the grid and help support renewable energy development. But I just think that I I think even with that knowledge myself, that like regulators are going to potentially regulate proof of work in the future, and that kind of scares me. So, moving to proof of stake, I think obviously removes that risk, and just like everything going on with the whole ESG narrative really helps the case of Ethereum. And it's just really hard to say like what is more centralized or decentralized. But I think like the whole thing with OFAC, and the tornado cash sanctions uh, definitely made me scared for a little bit with like the centralization of the Ethereum ecosystem. But I think they're making developments to improve that.
Tom, I want to move on and ask about stable coins, right? And a two-part question. One, what are your thoughts on stable coins, specifically stable coins that are backed by reserves, audited reserves? And two, what are your thoughts on stable coins that are not traditionally backed by reserves but are decentralized stable coins, whether they're fractionalized, whether they're backed by yield bearing or other assets? I would love to hear, especially as a programmer and someone that works with this stuff on the back end, what your thoughts are on the different types of stable coins out there, and what your favorite, what stable coins that you currently see in the market that you're like, hey, I don't mind, putting my money into that.
Yeah, I think honestly, stablecoins could be one of the biggest applications in the future, um, that comes out of this blockchain space, because the obviously the whole issue with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that they're super volatile, like they can't serve as a means of payment. So, you lose the whole aspect of like censorship resistance and all of that. But with stable coins, obviously with the stable value and just kind of the use case, looking at more so like the third world countries and just other countries and international payments, I think is like where the traditional financial system is very broken. I was actually like I was in London with a friend that was from the UK, and like there was a whole like we had split a dinner, and he had paid for it and I had to pay him, and he like couldn't download Venmo, and he had Cash App, so I had to like download that app, and that it just showed like stable coins, a decentralized system with interoperability. Any app can build on top of that and easily integrate. Like I shouldn't have to download another app. So I still like that's where I'm like this makes perfect sense. And I generally like I feel more safe with just fully reserved stable coins like USDC that are fully audited, and the whole idea of algorithmic stable coins. Like I just don't know if we can I don't know if that can ever reach mass adoption again after the whole Terra Luna blow up. But there also is an issue with USDC in the fact that there's a point of centralization and censorship. So I think stablecoins like DAI that are decentralized in nature and have like over collateralized with cryptocurrencies, I think that could be a model that also proves successful. And I think we could potentially have both. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting space to track. And like, I think we need stablecoin adoption over central bank digital currencies.
Right on. Couldn't have said any of that better myself. So we'll move on to the last last question of this Q&A part. Thoughts on NFTs, but specifically, Tom, which industries do you see NFTs disrupting the most?
Yeah, NFTs are very interesting because I think the first evolution was like profile picture projects and digital art, and that's really what drove like the NFT hysteria, where the markets reached all-time highs. And now that bubble has burst, and now it's time for like the true utility of NFTs. And I think areas that could prove very successful are kind of like the Web3 type industries. So like NFTs as tickets, or NFTs for like the art industry, where artists are using it as like a financialization model. Um, Even art has certain benefits, and like community building passes. Like people, like if you look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, like it's hard to like justify something being that expensive, but at the end of the day, it's just like a pass that gets you into this like elite club. And obviously I think it's kind of disgusting that people like need to flex in that manner, but like there's definitely like that NFTs as like digital ownership and being a part of a community, I think is where like the value lies.
Tom, if I had to encapsulate this entire space in a few words, I would say you really get it. And I, I think it's awesome that we have folks like you. I believe you're vice president of Cuse blockchain, spearheading the educational campaign at the grassroots level, at the collegiate front. I think it's really important for students to have folks like you and the infrastructure that you've built there for them to use and to learn from if they want, because a lot of us didn't have that even a few years ago in college. So hats off to you, man. If there's any closing thoughts or statements you'd like to share with us, go ahead and do so now.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I think I kind of covered everything that I wanted to. And it's been great. It's been really great to discuss things with you, and I hope we can kind of continue to develop this community and help continue to educate others.
Absolutely, Tom. Definitely be in touch with you and find different ways we can work with each other to make that happen. So again, the entire Whale Coin Talk team, the Aquarium team, and myself, we thank you for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Noah. Thank you for being here today. Remember that everything you hear on these broadcasts is meant for educational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. So be safe out there and take care.
Thank you. Bye.